A few months back, we had our Davis Younts on the program. He's representing clients in the militaries, in Navy SEALs, pilots, and others, fighting for their ability to have a religious exemption against the imposed mandate of being vaccinated for COVID. And we've invited him back on the program to get an update to the program, especially in light of the breaking story that came out last week about this preliminary injunction. Welcome back to the show, Davis Younts. Thank you for your time.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to come back on and provide an update.
Yeah, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you. In relation to your clients in particular, have there been any updates, and what is the news?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. I want to start with the Texas case. I think that's a great place to start. So what's happened in Texas, in the Northern District of Texas, is you had a judge issue a preliminary injunction to stop the military from enforcing the vaccine mandate. Now, as of today, that only applies to the 35 plaintiffs in that case. But I think more importantly, and what is significant for all of my clients, is the fact that that judge in that case has recognized that, and the language used in that case is theater, that so far the religious accommodation process across the Department of Defense for all branches of the military has been a ruse. It has been nothing but political theater. The fix has been in from the beginning. We've now seen whistleblowers who are showing and proving that the intent has been to deny all religious accommodation requests from the beginning. So it is really, really significant. We've had brave whistleblowers come forward, provide that information, provide information to attorneys like myself. We've been able to make that a part of that litigation, and it will be part of the litigation in Florida as well as we move forward. But that, I think, is the most significant update.
From what I understand, in that particular case in Texas, they discovered that the letters of denial that all these members of the armed forces were receiving were exactly the same as cookie cutter material, which kind of tipped them off to there is no intent here to actually review case by case.
That's absolutely right. For my clients and others, what we're seeing is across all branches of the service, it is the same memo disapproving the religious accommodation request. The only thing they're changing are the dates and the names. And one of the reasons we were able to it's obvious when you look at the memo, but it's even worse. I have clients who received their denials back that have the wrong information about them. They have someone else's job title, duty position, or something else. So they're not even editing very well as they're doing this, cut and paste. The other issue is in the military, one of the things that happens when you prepare a package like this to go up to a senior leader, one of the things you do is you provide options to that senior leader. So typically, the way an accommodation package should look, when I was on active duty and I prepared an accommodation package, it would go up and it would have both an approval memo and a denial memo. In other words, you would have both options presented to the commander and say, boss, if you want to approve this, sign the approve memo. If you want to disapprove this, sign the disapprove memo, and you create it that way. In this case, what's happening now in the military is there is no approved memo. It doesn't exist. All of the packages are going up the same way. We've been able to show that they've all had they all get the disapprove memo. There is no approval memo. Even worse, I have interviewed individuals in the Navy who have received a denial memo before they even submitted their package. So they were on a list. They informed their chain of command, I'm going to submit an accommodation. And because of these errors that are going on in the process errors, they actually got their denial back before they'd even submitted their accommodation request.
That's insane. I mean, that should give a pause to most of us to the reality of the coordinated agenda behind the scenes. And I guess to some degree, I had, last time we talked, I served in the Marine Corps, you served in the Air Force, and, we signed the contract. I get that. But golly gee whiz, not one single member, multiple hundreds of thousands of servicemen and women, and not one single person is allowed to have an exemption. That is rather bizarre to me. What do you think the chances are that in the end, these members will obtain their rights to have an exemption?
Yeah, it's difficult to predict exactly how this is going to play out. Military members don't give up their constitutional right just because they join the military. And the reality is we swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution. So it would be crazy to think we give up all of our rights in that. The issue as I see it right now is this. The military at DOD isn't just ignoring the Constitution, they're also ignoring the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So really the issue is the military developing a fair process to determine whether or not religious accommodations can be granted and still accomplish the mission? The military hasn't even started doing that because all they have done is had a plan to deny and force vaccination from the beginning. So until the military actually starts doing that, until they're forced to do that by federal courts, which I think now is coming, praise God, we're not going to see the fallout from this. But I mean, I have clients that work from home, that are reservists, even in the military that work from home, that are very near retirement. We have all of those things. So I do think there are some cases where absolutely the military can and should grant these accommodations that would be easy cases to grant it. And that's what's baffling to me, even from a legal standpoint. Why wouldn't they start approving some? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
You said a minute ago that this preliminary injunction out of Texas was specific to those Navy SEALs. I guess let me ask a dumb question. Why only those? Why is it possible the judge could have said, no, wait, we're putting a preliminary injunction on all service members, or did he have to only do those Navy SEALs that were before him?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So the issue with the temporary injunction, just like the OSHA mandate that went up to the Supreme Court, and when you're at the injunction phase, you're talking about a very, very narrow set of issues that are sort of on an emergency basis. So it starts with those individual plaintiffs, and then the attorneys in that case will be seeking class certification. So they will be seeking to include either all similarly situated military members or all military members as a whole in a class, and then the injunction would apply to them as well. And that's what Liberty Counsel in Florida is working on as well with their case in Florida, is getting that class certification. So that's coming, but there's a process. You're sort of in the emergency stage right now with military members being discharged after their religious accommodations and their appeals have been denied. So that's why it's at that stage.
Yeah, we're up against a break here, and after the break, I want to ask you about some of those discharges and what that means for those members. But real quick, on the OSHA case before the Supreme Court, what do you think? You got about a minute.
Boy, I think that there was some good indications that many of the justices, I think maybe a small majority, understand the issues and are analyzing this from the proper legal context, in my opinion, when we talk about government power and OSHA power. So I think we can expect good news there. It's hard to predict. I think it's going to be a close thing, but I'm hopeful.
And will that have a bearing on the Department of Defense?
I think it will, because the Department of Defense has to decide whether or not they're going to appeal the injunction in Texas. That will go to the Fifth Circuit Court, and then from there to the Supreme Court. So the DOD mandate could get to the Supreme Court very quickly, and I think the OSHA ruling will have a big precedent-setting impact on that.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you're not going to impose it upon businesses, why should you impose it upon those members of our society that swear an oath to sacrifice so much for us, right? So, all right, hold that thought. We're going to go to a quick break. We're going to come right back. Davis Younts is our guest, catching up on this story about these mandates against our service members. His website, by the way, is younts.law.com. That's YOUNTS law.com. Check that out. But we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Share us with a friend. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to Catholic Drive Time, keeping you informed and inspired. I'm your host, Joe McClain. So good to be on with you. Praise be to God. Davis Younts, an attorney, is our guest. He is following up on a story that we covered several months back. He is representing clients from the U.S. military, Navy SEALs to be included, pilots and others, in fighting for their religious liberty against the COVID vaccine mandate that the Pentagon has imposed. And we've been discussing that, and we're welcome you back to the program, Davis Younts. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
So one of the questions that I wanted to ask was about, we came back from our Christmas break and we saw 206 Marines had been already discharged. But from what I understand, as much as 13,000 Marines are still out there unvaccinated. Do you have any information, two parts here, I guess. Number one, do you have any information on how many members are left to be vaccinated? And then what is the status of those discharges? What is that? What are the implications of those discharges?
Yeah, so last week, the Department of Defense issued numbers that it's still over 30,000 active duty military members remain unvaccinated or in some stage of that process. So the DoD's numbers have been a moving target, unfortunately. They've typically underestimated that number, but as of last week, it was still over 30,000. So that doesn't include Guard and Reserves. The latest numbers I've seen puts that number closer to 50,000 total. It's probably higher than that when we look at Guard, Reserve, and active duty. So what's happening now so far is the Marine Corps has, it's over 200 that they have discharged. The Air Force is following on behind and starting to discharge folks. What we're seeing so far, the people that are being discharged in the Marine Corps and the Air Force are individuals who simply did not get the vaccine, did not necessarily put in a religious accommodation request, or didn't get it in by the deadline. And what we're seeing is they're starting with the lowest ranking enlisted troops. They're starting with folks that are still in training, somewhere in the training pipeline, some sort of basic or initial training. So that's where it's at right now. And so far, they're either receiving an entry-level separation, which is an uncategorized service characterization because they're in the training pipeline, or they are receiving an honorable discharge if there's no other misdemeanor.
So they're getting honorable discharges.
Yeah, so one of the things that's happened that's a big update since last time we talked is Congress did act in the National Defense Authorization Act, and they limited the authority of the DoD to characterize discharges when it comes to the vaccine mandate. So military members will receive either an honorable discharge or a general under honorable conditions because Congress did act. So that's helpful. Obviously, receiving an honorable discharge is the goal for anyone who serves in the military. A general under honorable conditions discharge sounds good because it says it's under honorable conditions. It still has pretty devastating negative effects for most military members because it takes away your GI Bill, so it takes away money for education, training, college. And it's also a negative when it comes to applying for jobs. Most employers want to see an honorable discharge, and if they see anything less than that, it does create a stigma. So it's still a big issue. It's still a significant issue what's going on there, but there is some good news in that.
So what about re-enlistments? Would it be possible for those folks at some point, let's just, pretend here for a moment, 10 years down the road, they're young enough still, let's just say they qualify, and all of this is reversed course. All of this has changed. We've gone back to, quote, normal, unquote. Would they be able to re-enlist?
Yeah, probably not without going to the Discharge Review Board or the Board of Corrections for Military Records. Because what's going to happen is they're going to receive a DD-214, that document that says, hey, I served in the military, and it's going to have a reentry code. Most of these people I'm seeing are being alleged to have committed misconduct by not receiving the vaccine, even if they're submitting a religious accommodation. So they're receiving an RE4 code, a reentry 4 code, which does prevent future service unless you get that changed.
Wow. That is pretty devastating to many people who've put their heart into this, blood, sweat, and tears, into trying to, not only enlist, but to make it through, to pursue in excellence their military occupations, and especially when you think of like Navy SEALs, people like that. Well, we've invested over $1 million in tax funds to train them at the highest possible level so that they can conduct missions for us around the planet in the most dangerous circumstances. A lot of those guys, they must be highly impacted by this. How is their morale?
God is good. My clients are men and women of faith, so they're trusting in that. But there's a level of frustration and just sadness, I would say, is one of the biggest things. To have given so much, to have sacrificed so much, to have a desire to serve, and then to be faced with this choice has been difficult. But I think there's been a renewing of faith. I think there's been a turning back to church, a turning back to Christ, and all of this for my clients. And it's an opportunity to prioritize things in your life. I know it's been that way for myself and my wife and my family and my daughters as we pursue this. I'm at 19 years total service myself. So I'm in this fight with my clients as well.
Wow. Well, we'll be praying for you in particular then as well. One of our listeners and super fans here, Mike, who is a veteran, he asks, what is the likelihood that the military will defer to the courts? There is a long history of the military ignoring these decisions until the issue is no longer relevant. So I guess another way to ask this might be, even if the court comes out against this mandate, what is the likelihood Department of Defense will simply ignore it and do what they're going to do anyway?
You know, I think there's kind of two parts to that. One is the big picture and sort of what happens in the public-facing aspects of this. I think the court, they will have to recognize, they will have to abide by the courts, and we've seen that in the past. Even with the anthrax vaccine, when that was experimental, and a lot of military members were injured by bad batches of that vaccine that were experimental, the courts did intervene. There was some relief for military members in that situation. So I see that. My concern is going to be the long-term retaliation that may happen for many of my clients. So I have clients that have lost their jobs in the military. They've been fired as executive officers, as commanding officers. They've been pulled out of the plane. So those are the people that I'm worried about, because even if we're successful in the court process or in other processes, there's still pretty devastating impacts to their careers, and that's going to take a long time to sort out.
There was also another report out, was it a week and a half ago? There was a naval ship that had an outbreak, completely vaccinated. Every single person on the boat was vaccinated, and still they had outbreaks. Does the Department of Defense take stuff like that into account to go, okay, the majority of our forces are in fact vaccinated, a small percentage isn't. It's no matter what we do, it's going to be an issue. How badly could this very tiny portion truly impact the mission when, I mean, the reports, the studies, everything seems to point contrary to the prevailing opinions here? What say you, Younts?
Well, you know, I say that one of the things I've been asking, one of the difficult questions I've been asking from the beginning is, why is the Department of Defense ignoring natural immunity? Most of my clients, particularly Navy SEALs, they've been all over the world. They've been carrying on missions throughout the pandemic up until this deadline was imposed. And so they've either been exposed to or had COVID, and most of them have natural immunity. So one step for the Department of Defense could take is to simply recognize natural immunity as at least a significant factor in decreasing this. And they won't. So I don't have a good answer to that other than to say it feels very, very political. There appears to be an agenda that says, we don't like religious faith that impacts your actions beyond your beliefs. We don't like that. If you're going to disagree with what we're doing, we don't like that in this large bureaucracy that is the Department of Defense. And sadly, and I don't want to get too far off on it, but sadly, that's not limited to the vaccine. I mean, we're seeing that when it comes to other issues, marriage issues, and other things. If commanders share or express their religious beliefs, even praying in Jesus' name can be a reason to be fired in the military today. So I suppose we shouldn't be surprised that there's a one-size-fits-all approach, and the dogma has to be, the political dogma has to be accepted, or you're going to be on the outside.
Yeah, you just made me think about the pushback at the academy level. The Air Force Academy, I think, gave Christians a pretty hard time there, trying to accept even like the Wiccans, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a couple of years since that story, but the military academy is pushing back on chaplains, for instance, praying in Jesus' name. So very, very concerning. Do you see the midterms, or like, let's just say that the next presidential election swings back to the Republican side? Would that change any and all of this?
I think that the midterm elections could have a significant impact on the political environment. It won't solve everything, but I do think if there is a revitalization of Congress towards people that want to see a respect for religious freedom and want to see military readiness and sort of a rational approach to this come into play, I think that's a strong possibility. And I do think that would impact this. I mean, a lot of the problem here is you have careerist military leaders who are more concerned about their own career and the political fallout from this than they are about doing the right thing. And I say that, I don't say that lightly. That comes directly from my clients and people I interview. Commanders over and over again are telling them, oh, I'd love, I'm with you on this. I agree with you, but there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. So you don't have high-level leaders across the board standing up to this. So it's very political, but if the political winds change, then there's a possibility that would change as well.
Is there anything average citizens can do, like our audience? Could they make phone calls to their congressional leaders? What should they do to help?
Yeah, absolutely. I think reaching out to Congress over and over and over again and sort of being, a squeaky wheel in that regard is really, really important. There are nonprofit organizations that are involved with this. One of the nonprofits that I'm partnering with is called Stand With Warriors. That's standwithwarriors.org. That was started by a group of pastors for the Navy SEALs. So people can go out to standwithwarriors.org and get information there and help contribute. We're hoping to, cover legal fees for folks as well as get education out there, the members of the general public. And I think just being engaged and asking good questions of Congress and pushing political leaders helps. And then prayer. I believe very, very strongly in the power of prayer. We need to pray for a religious revival in our nation. We need to call people back into the churches, and we need to have our churches stand strong for truth and freedom in our country. So that's what we can all do.
Yeah, praise be to God. Our Davis Younts, we're very grateful to you for your time today. Thank you for being on. We'll look forward to having you back soon. Younts.law.com is the website. That's YOUNTS law.com. Our Davis Younts, thank you for your time again. God bless you. God love you. Have a great day.
God bless you.
All right, that is going to do it for hour number 1 of Catholic Drive Time. Very grateful to have had that conversation. If you can join us in the second